Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a long-awaited build video for the Necromancer. This is the Scribes of Fate patch, and I have been complimented on BGs, open world, dueling, what have you, about this build, and people are eager to just see what the build's all about, what I'm running, the skills, how everything ties in together with the tethers. So, without further ado, I think that it is appropriate to just lay it out there that it's pretty much meta. And there's nothing that super different about the build in particular other than the fact that it's on the worst class in PvP, arguably the worst class in PvP. Now, Stamina and Magicka both have their niches in the game. Stamina is probably performs a little bit better in PvP per se, but the class or the build that I put together just goes really well with how the current state of the game plays. The Necromancer obviously has increased dot damage, so I took pretty much all of the meta sets that everyone's running in the game and I put it on the Necro. And I switched up the skills that the Necro has in its toolkit because the Boneyard did take a pretty hefty nerf along with the Harmony jewelry traits. So why they gutted the already worst class in the game even more and then buffed the strongest class, it is what it is. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I would like to share what I have been running on my Necromancer and to show that it is not dead. Kind of weird to say about a Necro, but the class itself is not dead. So without further ado, we are a High Elf. This is our character sheet on buff stats on the front bar. High Elf, running 37 into Magic, 27 into Stamina, just to even it out a little bit since it is kind of a hybrid setup. That's basically the best way to play what I am running for skills. Generally, it seems like a lot of classes are going the hybrid style. Some, don't have to necessarily, but for this to work, I chose the hybridization route. Apprentice Mundus, we are stage 3 Vampire. We are using Jewels of Misrule. Pretty much meta. Looking into our sets, Master's Dual Wield on the front bar. You can choose your poisons depending on what you like. Not too big of a deal, really, but the Master's Dual Wield it's very strong. Like I said before, dots are very strong on the Necromancer because of its Rapid Rot passive, giving you an increased 10% damage with dots. So Master's Dual Wield was the first on the list to add to its toolkit. We are running a mace and a sword. Sword being Nirnhone, mace being Sharpen. Back bar, you guessed it, Vanisher and Ice Staff. Defending traits, you're going to hit your target with Elemental Susceptibility, and while that ticks, you're going to have damage done, increasing by 1% up to a max of 20%. So, having both of these together on a class that has increased dot damage is very, very strong. Balorg, another bread and butter sets. Basically going to give you the penetration you need when you need it, and our ultimate is pretty cheap to use as well, so we're going to be proccing this pretty much all the time. Trainee, chest piece, reinforced. All of my stuff has the tri-enchantments, minus a few pieces that I didn't do. I think there's 3 of them. Yeah, those 3. Mara's Balm, of course, this is meta. Like, there's going to be stuff on you all the time, and having a free purge with a cooldown, even though it's a cooldown, it's still free. It is absolutely critical, especially when you're in an outnumbered situation. The health did take quite a bit of a nerf, but it's really not that important. The important thing here is the purge that it gives you for the 6 negative effects. Now, that being said, the Necro also has its own purge, but it costs health. The way that you could play is you could use Expunge and Modify or the other Morph Hexproof, and each time that you remove a negative effect, it's going to cost health, but this is also going to give you back that health in return, plus more depending on how many negative effects you have on you. So keep that in mind. There's always that playstyle route too. Sea Serpent's Coil, next on the meta list, you guessed it, and Bloodthirsty. all weapon damage traits. Then the ring and another ring of trainee to finish off the inventory here. So Sea Serpent's Coil, I played around with this and Markin's Ring Majesty. Sea Serpent's Coil just makes more sense. Missing out on that Major Berserk is pretty critical, especially in a class that doesn't have the greatest burst potential. So having all that increased dot damage on top of the Major Berserk and the, what is it, Major Courage? Yeah, it's definitely noticeable, significantly more noticeable with Sea Serpent's Coil versus Markin's Ring. So definitely my choice for this setup, and Swift for the other two pieces. You could do it on this one too. I also have a trainee Bloodthirsty. I kind of go back and forth between these, but I don't really notice that much of a difference, so I might just keep the Bloodthirsty on. Okay, so now that you've seen the sets, let's go into the skills here. Excuse me. First skill on the list, Mystic Siphon. So this build is utilizing both tethers, and when I say both tethers, I also mean Mortal Coil. Mystic Siphon, we're going to talk about this skill because it does so much for a free ability. So back to dots. It is applying a dot both to the corpse and yourself and the tether between you two. So you could go in a circular formation and kind of kite around a little bit, and any person that crosses that tether or is in with 5-meter radius of you or the initial corpse itself, you're going to be taking this dot damage. It's also giving a 150 magic stam and health recovery. It's also going to increase your damage done by 3% across the board. That's all abilities. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, and then it's also going to increase your spell penetration because of the passive in the Gravelord tree is giving you, whenever you have a Gravelord ability active, you're going to get 1500 spell and physical penetration. So 4 very crucial, important things all in one skill, and it's free. Pretty sure that is something that no other class has. So Stalking Blast Bones, this is our main burst potential ability here. It gets pretty cheap when you use the reusable parts passive. On top of that, you're going to have the summoning armor, so that's going to help with the cost as well. Empowering Grasp. This is by far my favorite move or skill in the entire game at the moment, because I used to use it all the time in the past, but I was using it incorrectly. I had it on my back bar, and this is like way back when Necro first came out. And that's not the correct way to use it. You want to use this offensively. So if you read the tooltip here, you're going to summon 3 patches in front of you. The first patch is going to snare the opponent by 30%. Second patch is going to immobilize the enemy, and then the third patch is going to stun them. Now, each different circle does something different, but no matter what circle the enemy is in, they're also going to get minor maim applied to them. That's pretty crucial in talks of damage reduction, but also it's going to increase the damage and the heal by 1,000 for your summons. So it's going to buff your Blast Bones by another 1,000 damage, and it's also going to buff your Ghost with another 1,000 heal per tick for 10 seconds. So when you summon your Ghost and then you switch back offensively, if your Ghost gets hit by this, it's pretty much for the duration of the Ghost, because within that time period, you've maybe like a second or two that the Ghost won't have the buff. But I can just quickly show you. You summon your Ghost, summon your Blast Bones, and see how they're glowing? See the Ghost glowing, the Blast Bones was glowing. So if you pay attention to this, you know that the Ghost has the buff, and so each tick that you get that the Ghost already provides is going to do an additional 1,000 healing on top of that. So if you pay attention to our dummy here, we're going to summon a Blast Bones. So uncrit 13,394. Blast Bones with an Empower 13,518. Did it crit before? 13,682. So the damage goes up, and when you have all of your buffs active too, of course, that's going to multiply the damage even more. So one more time, Blast Bones buffed, 13,758. It's free damage, so why not use it, right? So in the rotation, generally, I'll hit a Blast Bones, then the Empowering Grasp with the Rending Slashes and the Scythe, and then if you have a Donny, then Donny too, and that's pretty much the combo. Ruinous Scythe. This is going to be our main spammable. Don't get too crazy with this. It can drain your stam pretty heavily, but it's definitely a good source of healing. If you happen to run out of magic and you need to get a quick burst heal off, this will do the job. It's also going to apply Hemorrhaging status effect and set them off balance, giving you a free stun when you medium weave in with your abilities. Rending Slashes, of course, because we're running Master's Dual Wield, it's going to give you crazy bleed damage when the Sea Serpent Coil procs. And I mean, like, literally crazy damage. The bleed damage tooltip triples, and I don't know why, but it goes from 12,000 up to like 36,000, so it does a lot of pressure with this ability by itself. Now, Dawnbreaker of Smiting is my current ultimate, but I was playing around with Thrive of Chaos. This is the morphed version of Lacerate. This is the dual wield ultimate. Don't sleep on this ultimate, guys. Not a lot of people run this. So it did get buffed, and it went unnoticed for multiple patches. So it used to just be single target. Now it does a cone, and healing you for the damage done on top of increasing the damage per enemy hit. So it's kind of like a Dawnbreaker in a way, but with much more aggressive, a much more aggressive dot. There's no initial damage up front. It does cost a little bit more, but you're going to increase your damage with multiple enemies hit, and they're all going to be taking bleed damage, which we have the 10% increased dot damage to buff that. And it just pretty much coincides with the rest of our dots that we're running too. So it's like, no matter how much pressure you're putting out, you're going to be receiving that healing back, and it does 15% more damage with the dual wield passives too. So you got all of these multipliers in your head. I know it sounds a little confusing with me rambling on about it, but if you take the time to read the tooltips and go through it and kind of like add up the math, you can see how much damage your build could potentially output, and then you can also take that and do it on a test dummy yourself, and you can see it. So moving on to the back bar, nothing's too dramatically changed here. Summoner's Armor, Resistant Flesh. This is kind of like a not my favorite burst heal in the game. Honestly, if this didn't have the physical and spell resistance added to it, I would definitely drop this for another heal, but it's the only burst heal that we have, so that's why we have it. Mortal Coil, this is going to give you some sustain on top of a really good heal, plus the 3% healing done will help with Resistant Flesh as well. Keep that in mind. Also with your Spirit Guardian, if you're on this bar and it ticks. Spirit Guardian, of course. I mean, like, you can't not have this. The 10% damage reduction is clutch. Elemental Susceptibility for our Vatistrin. It's going to give the enemy a debuff. And then Temporal Guard just for the minor protection. Looking at our CP, we are running Exploiter. Our Scythe will proc this, it's giving us 10% more damage. Force of Nature, we're going to have a lot of dots. And with dots come with different status effects. So we're going to have a lot of penetration on our side too when we are playing in CP. Master at Arms, just to increase our overall damage by 6%, direct damage. And then buffing our dots even more with another 6%. Looking at the red tree, we have Boundless Vitality, Fortified, always need more armor and more health. Sustained by Suffering. Mars Bomb is going to take away a lot of our effects, but when we are on cooldown and when we don't have that 6 effects up, we are going to get extra recovery to help us out. And then celerity, because movement speed is critical. We are running Sea Serpent's Coil. Don't be slowed down. Sorry, I was reading Discord. Let's look at our fully buffed stats. So, spell damage... Oh, that's not it. There we go. Spell damage, 5134. Sea Serpent's Coil is going to buff that up to just a little over 5,500. And then, after the 5,500, when we do an ultimate... I guess I can just finish this guy off. So I'll wait for this guy to re-res itself, and then we can show you the fully buffed stats with Balorg. A 500 Balorg is going to put you well above 6,000, but just so the video's sake. So 5369. Sea Serpent's not going to proc because we aren't taking any damage, but you guys get the picture. See how the recovery is totally fine? We can even grab another tether here, summon our ghost with our potion, 1270 stamina, 1676 magicka. It really is doable. You don't need crazy crazy stats. So, hope you enjoyed the build. Like I said, this is pretty much meta, but I did choose to play it on a Necromancer, and it actually syncs up pretty well with the Necro's passives. It's also a nice way to play the Necromancer since the graveyard is really not that viable of an option. Of course, it does still work in some cases when you're using Dark Convergence, but I wanted to show people that the Necro is still a very fun class. Give it a try. Tell me what you think. Have fun raising the dead, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Stay frosty.